Love, a word that carries centuries of longing, myths, and music. A word that has shaped art, broken empires, and defined the quiet rhythm of ordinary lives. We hear it in the trembling of poems, in the silence between two hearts, in the ache of distance and the warmth of closeness. Yet beneath all its beauty and mystery, one question still lingers. What does it truly mean to love? Most of us grow up believing that love is something that happens to us, something sudden, like rain after a long drought. We speak of falling in love as if love were gravity pulling us toward another soul. It sounds romantic, but it also reveals a hidden truth, that we often approach love unconsciously, as something that happens rather than something we build. But what if love is not a fall, but a form of craftsmanship? What if it is not a loss of control, but a deep act of creation, an art that combines emotion with wisdom, desire with awareness, passion with patience? To understand love deeply, we must walk slowly. We must look beyond the fleeting emotion, beyond the romantic gestures and ideals, and into something older, quieter, and more enduring. Because love, when stripped of illusion, is both a mystery and a responsibility. Imagine love not as a single flame, but as a landscape, vast and shifting, at times radiant, at times clouded. There are seasons of growth, and there are moments of drought. There are days when the air feels full of light, and days when the soil feels heavy with misunderstanding. Love is not static. It changes as we change. To truly love someone, or to love life itself, requires presence, adaptability, and the courage to remain open when comfort turns to challenge. The Stoic philosophers knew this well. To them, life itself was a landscape of constant change, ruled not by our desires, but by the natural order of things. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Adapt yourself to the things among which your lot has been cast, and love sincerely the fellow creatures with whom destiny has ordained that you shall live." For the Stoic, love begins not in the heart's wildness, but in its clarity. It is an act of seeing another person not as we wish them to be, but as they are. It is loving not through possession, but through understanding. Most suffering in love comes from confusion, the confusion between love and possession. We often believe that to love someone means to hold them, to make them ours, to secure their presence. Yet, the Stoics remind us that nothing external truly belongs to us. Even the people we love most are, in the deepest sense, free beings, souls walking their own paths, subject to change and impermanence. Seneca once said, "He who loves with excessive ardor fears with excessive fear. The more tightly we hold, the more we fear losing. And in that fear, love becomes distorted. It turns into anxiety, control, or dependence." True love, the Stoics would say, is not about grasping, but about giving. It's about standing beside someone, not standing over them. It's about caring deeply without being consumed. To love in this way requires maturity, the maturity to accept that love is not security, but shared freedom. Carl Jung approached love from another angle, one that dives into the soul's hidden architecture. He believed that much of what we call love is, in truth, a projection, a reflection of our inner world cast onto another person. We do not fall in love with who someone is, but with what they awaken within us, the image, the echo, the promise of something missing or forgotten. In Jung's view, when we fall in love, we often meet our own unconscious through another. The beloved becomes a mirror, reflecting the unacknowledged parts of ourselves, our tenderness, our strength, our shadow, our wounds. This explains why love can feel both divine and destructive, because through love, we confront our own depths. We are drawn toward someone who embodies what we yearn to become or what we have hidden from ourselves. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." In that transformation lies both the beauty and the danger of love. We are changed, not always gently, but inevitably. And in this change, love becomes not only a bond between two people, but a path towards self-discovery. Here, the wisdom of Stoicism and Jungian psychology meet. Stoicism teaches us to hold love with clarity, to remain anchored in our reason, not lost in our emotion. Jung teaches us to descend into the depths, to understand that love also stirs our unconscious, awakening forgotten symbols and ancient desires. The Stoic seeks composure, the Jungian seeks wholeness. One guards against illusion, the other embraces it, only to understand it more deeply. Together they reveal a truth, that to love wisely, one must learn to balance control and surrender, light and shadow, acceptance and transformation. Love demands both the discipline of a philosopher and the vulnerability of a dreamer. To love well is to remain lucid within the emotion, to allow feeling without drowning in it, to open the heart without abandoning the self. Before we can truly love another, we must first meet ourselves. Without self-knowledge, love becomes projection, a search for completion outside rather than within. We begin to demand from others what only we can give ourselves: validation, peace, meaning. The Stoics would say, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Jung would add, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Together, these two truths form a mirror. If you do not know yourself, you will not know what you give or what you seek in love. You will confuse attachment with devotion, dependence with unity, desire with destiny. Love, then, becomes not a gift, but a cry for completion. But when we begin to see ourselves clearly, our fears, our patterns, our projections, we begin to love differently. We no longer seek salvation in another. We share presence. We no longer demand certainty. We offer understanding. Conscious love is not a perfect love. It is love aware of its imperfections, its limitations, and its fragility. Yet it remains steadfast, calm, and compassionate. To love consciously is to see the other person as a mirror and a mystery. It is to understand that love will sometimes hurt, not because it is wrong, but because it reveals. It shows us where we cling, where we fear, where we still refuse to grow. The Stoics remind us to accept what we cannot control: the changes in another's heart, the passing of time, the inevitable impermanence of life. Jung reminds us that through love, we are initiated into our own depth. We meet the divine and the dark within us. Love, then, becomes a path, not a possession. It becomes something to be practiced, not merely felt, and it asks of us not perfection, but presence. To the Stoics, love was never a weakness. It was a natural bond, a reflection of our shared humanity, the invisible thread connecting all rational beings. But they warned that love, when left unchecked, could easily turn into attachment, fear, or suffering. To love well, one must love wisely. In the Stoic world, wisdom and virtue guided every emotion. Love was not meant to control the soul, but to align it, to remind us of our place in the greater order of life. This vision of love might seem distant from modern passion, yet beneath its calm surface lies an enduring truth. Only a mind at peace can love without fear. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the quiet solitude of his journal, saw love as part of nature's rhythm. For him, the universe itself was an act of connection, each being intertwined with others, each life bound to the whole. He wrote, "Adapt yourself to the things among which your lot has been cast, and love sincerely the fellow creatures with whom destiny has ordained that you shall live." To love, in this sense, is to embrace reality. It means to see others as companions in this shared human experience, imperfect, fleeting, and yet profoundly sacred. Marcus does not speak of romantic intensity or poetic desire. He speaks of something quieter, the kind of love that endures when the initial flame has faded, when affection becomes understanding. It is a love rooted in compassion, not in the hunger to possess, but in the willingness to accept. He reminds us that every person, every relationship is transient. To love deeply is to remember that all we hold dear will eventually pass, and yet to love anyway. For the Stoic, this awareness is not tragic, but liberating. It frees the heart from clinging, allowing love to exist in its purest form. Gratitude for what is, rather than grief for what will change. Marcus also wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." Love for him is not something to demand. It is something to recognize. It is the quiet awe of existence itself, mirrored in the eyes of those who share it with us. If Marcus was the philosopher of acceptance, Seneca was the philosopher of balance. He did not reject emotion, he sought to educate it. Love, in his view, should elevate the soul, not enslave it. Seneca warned against what he called slavery of passion, the state where emotion blinds reason and love becomes obsession. He who loves with excessive ardor fears with excessive fear, he wrote, reminding us that the more we cling, the more we suffer. This does not mean that Seneca was cold or indifferent. In his letters, he often spoke tenderly of friendship and human affection, but he believed that love, to endure, must be guided by wisdom. Passion can ignite love, but only virtue can sustain it. For Seneca, the greatest expression of love was benevolence, the wish for another's good without selfish desire. He taught that true affection is calm, not restless, generous, not demanding. To love is to want happiness for the beloved, even if it no longer includes us. In his writings to Lucilius, Seneca described friendship, which he saw as a form of love, as a community of good things between good people. This love is built not on need, but on respect. It is the meeting of two free souls who enrich one another without attempting to control or possess. He might have said the same about romantic love, that it should not consume our reason, but harmonize with it. For when we lose ourselves completely in another, we risk losing the capacity to love well. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, took the Stoic teaching of love to its most practical depth. His words, sharp yet compassionate, remind us that suffering often comes not from what happens to us, but from how we respond. He said, "Never say of anything, 'I have lost it,' but 'I have returned it.'" These words may sound harsh to the modern ear, but Epictetus was not denying love. He was teaching liberation from grief's tyranny. He believed that if we can learn to love without clinging, we can experience both joy and loss with serenity. For Epictetus, love is sacred precisely because it is fragile. Every embrace contains the seed of farewell. To deny this truth is to live in illusion. To accept it is to love without fear. He advised his students to look at their loved ones and remember their mortality, not to become detached, but to become present. When you realize that every meeting could be the last, you stop wasting time on resentment and pride. You begin to cherish, not possess. This is the Stoic paradox. Detachment does not kill love, it purifies it. It transforms love from desire into reverence, from grasping into gratitude. If you look closely, the Stoics never said, "Do not love." They said, "Do not be destroyed by love." They did not reject affection. They rejected dependence. For the Stoics, love is not a storm to drown in. It is a sea to navigate with a steady hand. It is not blind surrender, but mindful devotion. To love as a Stoic is to open your heart fully while keeping your reason awake. Marcus teaches us compassion, Seneca balance, Epictetus freedom. Together, they describe a kind of love that does not need constant reassurance because it is grounded in understanding. It does not demand eternity because it honors impermanence. This form of love is not romantic in the usual sense. It is deeper. It is love as practice, as discipline, as philosophy. A daily act of choosing to see others with patience, kindness, and awareness. To live and love as a Stoic is to cultivate three things: clarity, to see others and ourselves without illusion, to know that every human being is imperfect, just as we are; acceptance, to recognize that love will change, that people will grow, that some bonds will fade, and that this is part of nature's flow; freedom, to love without attachment, to give affection freely, but never let it enslave the soul. Each of these requires inner work. It is not an easy love. It asks for awareness in moments of anger, for patience in times of distance, for calm in moments of loss. But it is a love that endures because it is not dependent on outcome. It lives in the present, not in the promise. When Epictetus said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things," he was also speaking about love. What hurts us most is not love itself, but the expectations we attach to it. We suffer when we demand permanence from what is transient, perfection from what is human. To love with Stoic wisdom is to let go of demand and enter into appreciation. It is to say, "I do not need you to complete me. I cherish you because we are both walking this path together for however long it lasts." The Stoic approach might seem disciplined, even austere, but its goal is not to suppress emotion. It is to refine it. When love is tempered by wisdom, it becomes a source of strength, not weakness. Imagine loving someone not from fear, but from freedom. Imagine caring deeply, not because you cannot live without them, but because their presence adds beauty to your already full life. This is Stoic love. Love that liberates both the giver and the receiver. It asks for no guarantees, no control, no endless reassurance. It simply says, "I choose to love you today, and in this moment, I am complete." Love, in the eyes of Carl Jung, is not simply an emotion that happens between two people. It is a meeting of two worlds, the conscious and the unconscious, the seen and the unseen, the known self and the self yet to be discovered. When we love, Jung believed, something ancient stirs within us. The energy of love awakens the hidden architecture of the psyche, our projections, our ideals, our fears, our forgotten longings. Love becomes both a mirror and a catalyst, reflecting who we are and revealing who we might become. If the Stoics teach us how to stay clear in love, Jung teaches us how to go deep. Every love story begins with a projection. We meet someone and something in them strikes a chord, a smile, a gesture, a tone of voice. It feels fated, as if we have known them before. In truth, we are meeting not only the person, but a part of ourselves reflected through them. Jung called this the projection of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine aspects of the psyche. These archetypal forces dwell within all of us, shaping how we relate, desire, and dream. A man might project his inner feminine, his anima, onto a woman, seeing in her everything tender, intuitive, and soulful that he has not yet embraced within himself. A woman might project her animus, her inner masculine, onto a man, perceiving in him strength, direction, or wisdom she has yet to cultivate consciously. In these projections, love feels divine, transcendent. The beloved becomes the embodiment of something eternal. We fall not only for them, but for the image of completion they awaken in us. Jung wrote, "When one is in love, one is in a state of psychological projection. One sees one's own most precious image outside oneself." This does not mean that romantic love is false. Rather, it means that love reveals, that what we adore in another often points to what we are seeking within. But the danger lies in mistaking the projection for the person. When the illusion fades, when reality emerges, and we see the beloved not as symbol but as human, disappointment often follows. The soul that once seemed radiant now appears flawed, ordinary. Many relationships break at this point because the projection collapses and what remains is unfamiliar. Yet this disillusionment is not the end of love. It is the beginning of real love, the moment when projection gives way to perception and fantasy gives way to truth. Jung believed that every great love story follows a psychological transformation. At first, we love through the lens of fantasy. We project our ideals and unconscious desires onto another person. We see not who they are, but who we need them to be. But over time, life reveals reality. The beloved disappoints, resists, surprises. Conflicts emerge, illusions break, and love begins to shift from enchantment to encounter. This painful process is not failure, it is evolution. It is the psyche's way of calling us toward wholeness. When we accept the other person as they are, not as our dream or our reflection, we begin to reclaim the projection. We integrate what we once sought outside, back into ourselves. The tenderness we admired in another becomes our own. The strength we adored becomes something we embody. In this way, love becomes an instrument of individuation, Jung's term for the process of becoming whole. Each love, no matter how joyful or tragic, is a mirror guiding us inward. It shows us what we value, what we fear, what we still need to heal. Through love, we meet our shadow, the disowned parts of ourselves that long to be seen. The shadow, in Jungian psychology, is the collection of everything we deny or repress, the emotions we fear, the impulses we reject, the qualities we refuse to acknowledge. In love, the shadow often emerges silently. It appears in jealousy, in control, in the subtle desire to dominate or be rescued. It surfaces when we idealize the beloved as perfect, or when we resent them for not fulfilling that perfection. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." Love, by its very nature, draws the shadow into the light. It exposes our dependencies, our insecurities, our unhealed wounds. That is why intimacy feels both beautiful and terrifying, because it makes the unconscious visible. When we feel intense emotion towards someone, whether adoration or anger, it is often our shadow reacting. The beloved touches something deep and unresolved within us. They awaken our inner child, our longing, our fear of abandonment, our need to be seen. To love consciously, then, is to stand in this light without flinching. It is to recognize that what we project onto the beloved, both the ideal and the flaw, belongs partly to us. The Stoic might respond to this with detachment, seeking peace through distance, but Jung asks for something different: integration. He calls us to look within and to embrace the shadow, transforming it into awareness. In Jung's philosophy, love is not only about union with another, it is about union within oneself. The path of love becomes the path of individuation, the lifelong journey towards psychological wholeness. Every relationship, every heartbreak, every desire is part of this process. The people we love act as mirrors, reflecting the parts of us we have forgotten, suppressed, or feared. When you love someone, you are unconsciously saying, "Through you, I will come to know myself." This is why even lost love holds value. A relationship may end, but its lessons remain, shaping the inner landscape of the soul. Jung believed that through conscious reflection, we could transform the pain of love into wisdom, into a greater understanding of who we are and what we seek. He once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." True love, then, is not comfort. It is transformation. It refines us, exposes our illusions, and expands our capacity to feel. The process of individuation invites us to turn inward, to form a relationship with the inner other. The anima and animus are not just concepts, they are living symbols of the soul's dual nature. To integrate them means to balance our inner energies, reason and emotion, will and intuition, strength and tenderness. When these inner opposites are reconciled, we no longer seek wholeness exclusively through others. We begin to find it within. This does not make love with another unnecessary. It makes it freer. We no longer cling to others out of need, but meet them out of fullness. In this inner harmony, love becomes conscious, not born of projection or fear, but of recognition. You see in the other person not the missing piece of yourself, but another soul walking the same path toward wholeness. Love, then, is no longer about completion. It becomes communion. Every deep love involves two movements, a descent into the unconscious and a return to consciousness. At first, we are pulled downward, into passion, desire, fantasy, and the symbolic world of the psyche. Love intoxicates. It dissolves boundaries. We feel larger than life, closer to eternity. But to remain in that state is to lose the self. Eventually, the soul demands balance, a return. We must reclaim our projections, rediscover our individuality, and learn to love the real, not the imagined. This return does not mean detachment. It means awareness. It is the moment when we begin to love not because of what we see in another, but because of what we have come to understand within ourselves. When this cycle completes, the descent and the return, love becomes sacred. It is no longer only emotion, but revelation. No longer illusion, but light. At the heart of Jungian psychology lies the symbol of the inner marriage, the union of opposites within the psyche. When the anima and animus unite, when the conscious self integrates its shadow, when the heart and mind learn to speak the same language, something luminous awakens. This inner marriage gives rise to a love that is steady and compassionate. It does not depend on possession, nor crumble under impermanence. It mirrors what the Stoics described as the tranquil soul, but with an added dimension: depth. The Stoic seeks equanimity. Jung seeks integration. The Stoic accepts impermanence. Jung transforms it. Both meet in the same truth, that love, at its highest form, is an act of consciousness, the meeting of two souls who have met themselves first. When two rivers meet, their waters swirl for a while before they merge, one carrying the cool clarity of the mountains, the other the fertile silt of the valleys. So it is with Stoicism and Jungian psychology, two currents of wisdom that seem at first to flow differently, yet both lead toward the same sea, the integration of self and the mastery of love. In this part, we enter that confluence. We explore how the Stoics' discipline and the Jungians' depth work together to form a complete vision of love, a love that is both conscious and compassionate, rational and tender, grounded in wisdom, yet alive with mystery. Stoicism teaches clarity. Jung teaches wholeness. Stoicism purifies the mind from illusion. Jung brings light to the hidden heart. If you love only with reason, you risk becoming distant, precise, but cold. If you love only with emotion, you risk being consumed, passionate, but blind. Love requires both: the clarity of the mind to see the truth, and the openness of the heart to embrace it. The Stoic knows how to love without losing himself. The Jungian knows how to love by finding himself in another. And between these two perspectives lies the art of integration, to love fully yet freely, to care deeply without clinging, to give without self-erasure. Let's recall the essence of Stoic love. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." This is not a call to detachment in the cold sense, but to presence, a kind of love that flows from understanding, not from need. The Stoic sees that attachment, when it becomes possession, turns love into fear. We fear losing the one we depend on. We fear change, distance, endings. But the Stoic's love is dignified because it stands on freedom. He loves because he chooses to, not because he must. He knows that every bond, however beautiful, belongs to the realm of impermanence. And yet, this truth does not diminish love, it deepens it. To love under the awareness of transience is to love courageously. It is to look at another soul and say, "I know you will change, and I will too. Yet, in this moment, I give myself fully, without illusion. This is clarity, not the clarity that denies emotion, but the clarity that makes it sacred. Jung's vision complements this with depth. He does not seek to restrain emotion, but to understand its origin. For him, love is the theater where our inner world plays its most intricate roles. He reminds us that what we love in others often reflects what is missing within ourselves. The woman who loves a man's confidence may long for her own assertiveness. The man who idealizes a woman's gentleness may yearn for his own sensitivity. And so, love becomes a mirror, not just of the beloved, but of the soul's unfinished story. This mirror can wound us, for it reveals our incompleteness. But if we face it with honesty, love becomes a path of individuation, the process of becoming whole. The Stoic teaches us to remain steady when emotions surge. Jung teaches us to dive into their depths and see what they reveal. When we unite these two, we learn how to feel deeply without drowning, how to reflect without retreating, how to love not out of emptiness, but out of awareness. To integrate Jung's wisdom is to recognize that every relationship awakens the unconscious, the anima and animus within, the hidden desires and fears, the longings of our shadow. To integrate the Stoic's wisdom is to remain composed as we face that awakening, to meet the chaos of love with the calm of a steady heart. Love, when seen through both lenses, becomes a practice of consciousness. You begin to recognize your impulses without obeying them blindly. You feel emotions without being ruled by them. You see your projections without shaming them, and you return again and again to the still center within you, the space where awareness and compassion coexist. A Stoic approach without psychological depth can become sterile, a fortress against pain. A psychological approach without Stoic strength can become endless analysis, a maze without exit. Together they form balance. Conscious love is not a constant state of bliss. It is the art of returning to awareness, to empathy, to truth, every time you lose your way. You will misunderstand. You will project. You will hurt and be hurt. But each moment becomes an opportunity for clarity, for forgiveness, for growth. The question is not, how do I avoid suffering, but rather, how do I meet it wisely? To live this integrated love, begin by observing yourself gently. Notice how you react when someone disappoints you. Do you withdraw like the Stoic who fears vulnerability? Or do you cling like the lover who fears abandonment? Both are defenses, and both hide the same longing, to be safe in love. The Stoic way is to pause, to breathe, to see the situation as it is. The Jungian way is to ask, what part of me has been awakened? Maybe an old wound, maybe a forgotten dream, maybe a part of your soul calling for light. When you bring both perspectives together, love becomes a teacher, not of comfort, but of consciousness. You begin to practice honest dialogue, not manipulation. You begin to see the difference between care and control. You begin to realize that the person you love is not yours to shape, only yours to understand. And perhaps this is the ultimate harmony of Stoicism and Jung, to love without chains and to see love as the mirror of your becoming. Love that is both Stoic and Jungian is a quiet strength. It does not shout, nor does it vanish in silence. It flows, patient, enduring, aware. It says, I will hold you without imprisoning you. I will see you not as my projection, but as a soul walking beside mine. I will love you not to escape myself, but to meet myself through you. In this integration, love ceases to be an escape from loneliness and becomes a journey into wholeness. The Stoic teaches you to stand firm in storms. Jung teaches you to listen to the thunder within. Together, they remind you that love is not found. It is built, refined, and awakened. As the rivers merge, their waters no longer resist each other. So too with love and wisdom, clarity and depth, mind and heart. What was once divided now flows as one. There is a moment, quiet and invisible, when love ceases to be something that happens to you, and becomes something you live. Not an emotion that comes and goes like the wind, but a steady presence that deepens with awareness. In this final reflection, we will walk through that transformation, from the search for love to the practice of loving, from the desire to be seen to the ability to see. Imagine love as a garden. In the beginning, it grows wildly, beautiful, spontaneous, full of color and fragrance. But soon, it demands care, pruning, watering, patience, and understanding. If you neglect it, it withers. If you try to force it to bloom before its time, you destroy its rhythm. The same is true for the heart. Love, when left to impulse alone, becomes chaotic, but when cultivated consciously, it becomes a living art. The Stoics teach us to tend this garden with reason, to see clearly, to understand what lies within our control and what does not. Jung teaches us to understand the soil, the deep unconscious where roots grow, where shadows and dreams entwine. To love consciously is to bring both sunlight and depth to your inner garden. You do not demand eternal spring. You honor every season, growth, decay, silence, renewal. Because love, in its truest form, is not about permanence. It is about participation. Seneca once wrote, "He who begins to love should be prepared to suffer." He was not condemning love, but revealing its nature. Every act of love is an act of vulnerability, a willingness to be changed by another's existence. Yet the Stoics remind us, suffering in love does not come from love itself, but from attachment, from believing we own what we cannot. No one belongs to us. We do not own hearts. We are invited to share them, briefly, beautifully, imperfectly. To love without possession is not to love less. It is to love more purely. It is to look at another and say, "I honor your freedom, even when it means you may walk away. I will not chain you with fear or control. My care for you is not a claim, but a choice, renewed every day." Such love is rare because it demands self-knowledge. It demands the courage to face your fear of loss and still open your heart. It demands that you replace the hunger to be needed with the wish to understand. This is what both Stoicism and Jung guide us toward, a love that is not needy, but nourishing, not possessive, but present. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When you love, you are transformed, not just emotionally, but existentially. Every relationship reflects back to you the person you are and the person you could become. You see your patience tested, your shadow revealed, your ego softened, your tenderness awakened. Sometimes love mirrors your best self. Sometimes it exposes your wounds, but always it invites you inward. The Jungian path reminds you, do not flee from what love reveals. If you feel jealousy, it shows where you still fear comparison. If you feel dependency, it shows where you have yet to stand on your own. If you feel avoidance, it shows where you still fear intimacy. Love, then, becomes a sacred mirror, one that reflects not only your joy but your unfinished growth. And if you can gaze into it without judgment, every relationship becomes a form of self-understanding. The Stoic heart is not cold. It is clear. It is the calm center that allows love to remain steady even when emotions surge. Marcus Aurelius said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to love." Notice that he includes love among life's greatest privileges, not as something to escape, but to cherish wisely. For the Stoic, love is an act of virtue. It is the extension of goodwill, compassion, and understanding toward another soul. Even when love ends, the Stoic remains kind. Even when love hurts, the Stoic remains just. Because love, when rooted in wisdom, becomes independent of outcome. It does not depend on being loved back. It simply is, like sunlight, shining because it is its nature to shine. This kind of love does not diminish you. It strengthens you. It teaches you to love with integrity, to speak with honesty, to stay grounded even when hearts drift apart. It is the balance between emotion and understanding, between surrender and sovereignty. Both Stoicism and Jung point toward a greater truth. The love you seek outwardly must first be found inwardly. You cannot meet another in truth until you have met yourself. You cannot give tenderness until you have faced your own hardness. You cannot love another's light until you have embraced your own shadow. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of all parts of the psyche into a unified self. The Stoics called it virtue, living in harmony with nature, reason, and your true character. Different words, same destination, inner unity. When you achieve this quiet harmony within, love ceases to be a search. You no longer grasp for completion through others. You share completeness with them. You no longer love to fill a void. You love to express abundance. In that state, love becomes what it was always meant to be, an act of awareness, a gift of being. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what kind of love are you cultivating within? Is it a love that clings or a love that frees? Is it a love that demands or a love that understands? Is it a love that burns briefly or one that glows steadily through the years? Every act of love begins with an inner choice, to approach the world not with need, but with awareness, to meet others not as saviors or threats, but as mirrors, to live love as a verb, not a possession. And so the question becomes not who will love me, but how can I become love itself? When love ceases to be something you chase, it becomes something you radiate. You find it in your patience, in your listening, in your silence. You find it in forgiveness of others and of yourself. And in that quiet transformation, you realize that love was never about finding someone to complete you. It was about remembering that you were already whole. As this meditation draws to its close, imagine standing beneath the evening sky. The sun has set, but its warmth still lingers in the air. You feel the pulse of life within you, steady, gentle, vast. You think of all the people you have loved and all who have loved you. Some remain, some have gone, yet all of them have shaped the landscape of your heart. Love, in the end, is not a single story. It is the thread woven through every experience that awakens you. It is the teacher disguised as loss, the comfort hidden in forgiveness, the silence that hums with gratitude. When you love consciously, you no longer ask life to protect you from pain. You ask it to make you wise enough to meet it with grace. You no longer search for perfect people. You learn to love imperfectly, beautifully, completely. Because love is not found, it is practiced, it is remembered, it is lived. So, as you walk away from these reflections, take with you this truth. Love wisely. Love deeply. Love consciously. Let reason be your compass, and compassion your breath. And in all things, remember, love is not what you hold in your hands. It is what you release through them. If this reflection touched you, if it guided you even a little closer to peace, I invite you to share it, to let others feel the same quiet light. Leave your thoughts, your reflections, your questions below. And if you wish to walk further into this journey of Stoicism, psychology, and the art of living, subscribe, not just to this channel, but to your own unfolding awareness. Because every act of listening, every moment of reflection is itself an act of love. A love that begins and ends within you. Whosoever looks outside dreams, whosoever looks inside awakens. And perhaps when you awaken, you will discover that to love, truly, is to awaken with another soul, side by side, in the light of understanding.